So friends, let us talk about the second P of GST, that is process supply. We have done with the first P of levy, that is product, when we have discussed about goods and services. Now we are discussing the second B of levy of GST. Now what defines levy of GST? The charging section happens to be section 9 of CGST Act read along with section 5 of IGST Act. Now we have entered the second P of levy where we are discussing about process supply. What were the 6 P's? Product, goods and services that we have completed, process supply that we are going to discuss, place which is intrastate, interstate that we have to discuss. Then the last 3 P's will be discussed in 3 separate topics: price discussed in valuation topic, percentage discussed in classification topic, and person discussed in reverse charge mechanism topic. So we are going to start with the second P, process supply. Rather, this is the most important P out of all the 6 P's of levy of GST, that is process supply. So when you are discussing about supply, you have to understand that supply is defined under section 7 of CGST Act. The lawmakers thought it to be so important definition that they decided that let us not have supply in the normal definition section 2. Let us take supply in a separate section, and therefore we have something called as section 7 of CGST Act 2017. So supply is not defined in a normal section where definitions are there, that is section 2. It is defined separately in section 7 of CGST Act. That is the importance of the term supply. Now understand that supply or the process, we are talking about actually process. So process is nothing but taxable event. Now what is taxable event? Whenever you are discussing about process for GST happens to be supply. Now, but first of all, what is process? Process for any tax law happens to be taxable event. That event which triggers the tax. That particular event which triggers the tax. And in case of GST, supply happens to be the taxable event. The event is supply. The moment there is supply, that triggers GST. Right? Taxable event is the process. Right? And when you talk about taxable event, is that event which will trigger a particular tax. For GST, supply is that event which triggers GST. Now you have to understand that under old laws, which you have already discussed in length in the first topic, GST in India, under old laws, for example, you are talking about excise duty. For excise duty, the taxable event which was there was production manufacture. Only if there is production manufacture, you will have excise duty. If at all you are talking about VAT CST, the taxable event for VAT and CST was sale. Only if there is sale, you can have VAT or CST. And if at all you are talking about service tax, you can have service tax only and only if there is provision or rendering of services. So when you talk about taxable event, you have to understand that every tax law has got a taxable event. For excise, it was production manufacture. For VAT CST, it was sale. For service tax, it was provision of services. And likewise, every tax law, rather even your income tax act has got a taxable event. Only if the taxable event is triggered, you can have your income tax. Now what is a taxable event? Accruing of your income, arising of your income, deemed to accrue, deemed to arise of income. That is the taxable event for your income tax act. So when you talk about taxable event for the purpose of GST, it happens to be supply. Every tax law will surely have a taxable event which we are calling it as process. And for GST, that taxable event happens to be supply. Without supply being there, there cannot be GST. Without supply being there, there cannot be GST. Right? That was only a basic understanding of what taxable event means. Whenever we are discussing about process in a technical language is nothing but we are discussing about taxable event which is going to trigger the particular tax. And for GST, that taxable event happens to be supply, because only if there is supply, that will trigger GST. Now, we have to have a bird's eye view for understanding how to read supply. We are going to discuss supply in many small parts. Now, for that, you should know how to read supply. So, we have a special bird's eye view for supply itself. We are not going to discuss supply in this particular page. We are only going to discuss how to read supply. We are not discussing what is supply. We are just discussing how to read supply. Rather, it put in a simple way, we are seeing the bird's eye view of supply. So when we are dealing with supply, which is under section 7 of CGST Act, read along with schedule 1, schedule 2, schedule 3, you should know that supply is very wide. Now how to deal with supply? It is to be dealt in separate parts. So when you are talking about supply, again mathematically supply can be written as supply is equal to actual supply is equal to actual supply plus deemed supply minus not supply. So that is the way where you can mathematically derive supply. Supply is equal to actual supply plus deemed supply minus not supply. So you are talking about, that is the way you are going to deal with supply. So supply you have to bifurcate into 3 parts. First we are going to discuss about actual supply. What is actual supply? Then our discussion will be about deemed supply. What is deemed supply? Then our discussion will be about not supply. What are the cases which cannot be categorized as supply? So supply we have divided mathematically into 3 parts. Actual supply plus deemed supply minus not supply. And each of the part we are going to discuss that in a simplified manner. How? When you are talking about actual supply, right? There is only one case in actual supply, because deemed supply has got 2 subparts and not supply has got 2 subparts. Actual supply has got only 1 part. You are going to check 3 things. What are those 3 things? Those 3 things are A, B and C. You are talking about A, B and C. You are going to check the presence of these 3 things. What is A? Activity, which is supply. B, business. C, consideration. Rather, there is no A. We are making it simple by calling it as activity, which is actually supply, right? So you are talking about 3 things, whether 3 things are present. If activity tells that I am present, if business tells that I am also present, if consideration tells that I am also present, then it is actual supply. If all these 3 elements A, B and C, what is A? Activity, which happens to be supply. B, business. C, consideration. If all these 3 elements are present, then you have something called as actual supply. And the moment you have actual supply, you need not worry about deemed supply, because it is actually normal supply. You need not even bother about deemed supply. What are the 3 elements that you should check for deciding whether it is actually supply in the normal circumstances? Activity is present or not, that is supply is present or not, plus business plus consideration. If all these 3 elements, that is activity being supply plus business plus consideration, they tell that all 3 of us are present, then it is actual supply. Then okay, what is deemed supply? Deemed supply has to be dealt in 2 parts. I'll repeat, deemed supply has to be dealt in 2 parts. So deemed supply, we are going to divide that into 2 parts. First part, you are going to discuss only about importation of service. Importation of service, right? Second part, you are going to discuss about schedule 1, which is otherwise called as supply without consideration. So deemed supply, we have to bifurcate into 2 parts. Part 1 discusses or deals only with importation of service. Importation of service, not about goods. Importation of goods is always subject matter of Customs Act. So part 1 deals only with importation of service, and part 2 deals with schedule 1. Schedule 1. Friends, we have already discussed that supply section 7, supply under section 7 has to be read along with 3 schedules. Schedule 1, which is otherwise called as supply without consideration. Schedule 2, which talks about nature of supply, being whether it is supply of goods or supply of services. Schedule 3, which talks about negative list, that is not supply, neither supply of goods nor supply of services. Now coming back to deemed supply, you have to bifurcate that into 2 parts. What is that? Importation of service and schedule 1. Let us focus only on importation of service. Now again, there are 3 things that you should check. What are the 3 things that you should check again? A, B and C. Again you are going to check A, B and C. Now activity that you are going to check is importation of service. It is not any activity. In normal supply, in actual supply, you checked all these three things A, B, C, but their activity was any activity being supplied. Any activity. In actual supply, the activity was any activity being supplied. Then business, then consideration. Here, activity specifically is defined, and that is importation of service. Importation of service. So there should be activity, but not any activity. It should be only importation of service. Business may be present, may not be present. It may be with business or maybe without business. It may be for business use or it may be for personal use. So business now is not important. May or may not be present. Consideration should be present. Consideration should be present. So what are we discussing, my friends? Three things. When you talk about deemed supply, we are discussing the first part. What is the first part? We are discussing about importation of service. Again, bifurcate into three criteria. Activity should be present. What is that activity? In case of deemed supply part 1, that activity is only importation of service. We are not discussing about any activity. We are discussing only about importation of service. Now, point number 2, business may or may not be present. So, business is not important. It may be present, may not be present. But what about consideration? Consideration should be present. For it to be covered by deemed supply part 1, for it to be covered by deemed supply part 1, deemed supply has got two parts, part 1, part 2. We are discussing only part 1, where we are discussing about importation of service. For a transaction to be covered by deemed supply part 1, you have to check three things. Activity, is it present? Yes, but which activity? Only importation of service, not any activity. Business may or may not be present, so business is not so important. Consideration should be present. Again, we are just understanding in a very broad manner. Don't worry about it. We are going to discuss in length about each of these points. We are just discussing how to read supply. We are not even entered inside supply, right? So that is deemed supply part 1. Now what is deemed supply part 2? Deemed supply part 2 is schedule 1 cases, which is otherwise called as supply without consideration. Supply without consideration. Now again you have to bifurcate that into three parts. Same part. Activity, business, consideration. Activity, business, consideration. But when you talk about schedule 1, activity should be there, but not any activity. 4 cases of schedule 1 only. You cannot talk about any activity. See, there's a difference in actual supply and deemed supply. Actual supply, you're talking about any activity being supplied, any activity. But deemed supply, whether it is part 1 or part 2, you're discussing about specific activities. Deemed supply part 1, specific activity that we were dealing with was importation of services. Deemed supply part 2, when we are discussing about schedule 1, specific activities that we are dealing with are only 4 cases which are given under schedule 1. So we are not discussing about any activity, we are discussing about only 4 notified cases covered by schedule 1. So activity is restricted to 4 cases of schedule 1. Business should be present. It is reverse now. Business should be present. Consideration is absent. And that is the reason it is called as supply without consideration. Business should be present. Consideration is absent. Now, if you look at things carefully, you will find that when you talk about deemed supply part 1 and deemed supply part 2, you just understand the differences. Deemed supply part 1 was talking about activity being only importation of service, and deemed supply part 2 was talking about activity being 4 cases of schedule 1. That is the first difference in terms of activity. Now, second difference in terms of deemed supply part 1 versus part 2. In the first case of in the part 1 of deemed supply, which talks about importation of services, business may or may not be present. Whereas when you are talking about deemed supply part 2, where we are focusing on schedule 1, business should be present. Business should be present. And when we are talking about the third difference between deemed supply part 1 and deemed supply part 2, in deemed supply part 1, which was focusing on importation of services, consideration should be present. Consideration should be present. Whereas in deemed supply part 2, which talks about schedule 1 4 cases, consideration is absent. Only because consideration was absent, we were forced to see schedule 1, which is otherwise called as supply without consideration. So that is the way we have to discuss deemed supply. Deemed supply to be discussed in 2 parts. Part 1, activity being importation of service, not any activity. Business may or may not be present. Consideration should be present. Deemed supply part 2, which is nothing but schedule 1. Activity being only 4 cases of schedule 1. Business should be present. Consideration is actually absent. That is the reason schedule 1 is otherwise called as supply without consideration. Now the last part of supply, how to read supply? Supply is equal to actual supply. We have broadly understood how to see actual supply plus deemed supply, part 1 and part 2. We have seen part 1 and part 2 of deemed supply minus not supply. Not supply is also categorized into 2 parts. First is notified cases and second is schedule 3. First is notified cases and second is schedule 3. Now what are the notified cases or the notified activities? Now there are few notified activities where it is said that notified activity cannot be treated as supply. Rather, to be very specific, how many notified activities are there? Notified activities by any person are of 2 types and notified activities undertaken by government are of 3 types. So totally there are 5 notified cases where it is not treated as supply of goods or supply of services. Again, I'll repeat my friends, supply is equal to actual supply. How we have to see? We have seen that. Plus deemed supply divided into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. We have seen that. Now we have entered not supply. Not supply also has categorized into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Not supply part 1 talks about notified activities or notified transactions. Notified activities by any person, there are 2 cases. Notified activities or transaction by government, there are 3 cases. In total, there are totally 5 cases where notified activities are not treated as supply of goods or supply of services. 2 cases are those cases where notified activities can be done by any person. 3 cases are those cases where notified activities or transactions are undertaken only by government. Right? That is part 1 of your not supply. What is part 2 of your not supply? Part 2 of your not supply deals with schedule 3, where you have in total 8 cases. Schedule 3 has got 8 cases, 8 notified cases where it is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. So in total you have 13 cases. In total you have 13 cases, 5 plus 8, where it is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. But you have to bifurcate, my friends. First part is notified cases, where you have totally 5 cases which are neither supply of goods nor supply of services. How you have bifurcation of those 5 cases? 2 are the cases which can be done by any person, 3 are the cases which are done only by the government. And not supply part 2 deals with schedule 3, and in schedule 3 there are 8 notified cases which are neither treated as supply of goods nor they are supply of services. Now one thing will come to your mind, my friends. We have discussed schedule 1, we have also discussed schedule 3, but schedule 2 is missing. Mind you, my friends, schedule 2 does not define what is supply. Schedule 2 only tells whether the supply is supply of goods or whether the supply is supply of services, which means that schedule 2 only tells nature of supply. Once you are very clear that it is supply, by applying the formula of supply, which is equal to actual supply plus deemed supply minus not supply, once you are clear with that, only after that enter inside schedule 2. Before that, please don't enter inside schedule 2. Schedule 2 does not defines what is supply. It only tells or it only clarifies whether the supply is that of supply of goods or whether the supply is that of supply of services. So that is given in the below part. Once you are very clear that it is supply, then come to the next question. What is the nature of supply? There are many cases clarified by schedule 2 where it will clarify that few activities are supply of goods and few activities are supply of services. Schedule 2 by itself will clarify. Even nature of supply has to be divided into 2 parts. One, schedule 2, other notified activities or notified transactions. Now as of now there are no notified transactions where government has said that this should be treated as only supply of goods, not supply of services, and this should be treated as only supply of services, not supply of goods. So the second part as of now is dormant. It is not effective. It is not used. Government has just kept a provision where they have kept the powers with themselves, that tomorrow they have the powers to clarify that this particular activity is only supply of goods and not supply of services, or this particular activity is only supply of services and not supply of goods. They have kept the powers with themselves, but as of today you don't find anything being notified under that part. So part 2 of nature of supply is lying dormant. It is not used. So the focus is only on part 1 of nature of supply. What is part 1 of nature of supply? It is schedule 2. Now schedule 2 tells whether the supply is supply of goods or whether the supply is supply of services. I'll repeat, my friends. Once you are clear with supply, which is equal to actual supply plus deemed supply, which you have to read along with schedule 1, minus not supply, which you have to read along with schedule 3. Only after that you have to jump to nature of supply. Before being clear with what is supply, please don't try to evaluate nature of supply. Once you are clear with supply and you get the answer that it is supply, please come to nature of supply. In nature of supply, again there are 2 parts. Part 1 is schedule 2, which tells that these certain activities are supply of goods and these certain activities are supply of services. Go and check that. And there are few notified cases which government may tell that these cases are only supply of goods and not supply of services, and these activities are supply of services and not supply of goods. As of now you don't have anything there, so forget about that part. You have to only go through the cases given under schedule 2. They will be mentioning few cases where they will tell that these are supply of goods, and they will be mentioning few cases where it will be said that it is supply of services. And this is the way you have to read supply. Rather, supply has to be read in 2 ways. Supply, first understanding what is supply, then understanding nature of supply, whether it is supply of goods or supply of services. Friends, supply, as we have discussed, we are going to discuss in 3 parts. Actual supply, then deemed supply, then not supply. First part would be discussing actual supply. First part would be discussing actual supply, where you have 3 things to be present. Activity, any activity should be present, that is supply should be present, plus business should be present, plus consideration should be present. So you are going to see the first part, supply. Now we are going to bifurcate supply into many parts. So first part of supply we are going to see actual supply. For actual supply to be there, you require 3 things to be present. What is that? Activity, business and consideration. Activity, business and consideration. What activity? Any activity. That activity is nothing but supply. Loosely we are going to call it as activity, but rightly it is called as supply. Business, B should be present. Consideration, C should be present. Supply is defined under section 7. Business is defined under section 2, clause 17, and consideration is defined under section 2, clause 31. Normally definitions are given under section 2, my friends, and we have already discussed that supply is so important that they did not give it under section 2, they gave it under section 7. So supply is defined under section 7. So now first let us take the meaning of supply. Supply under section 7 tells that supply includes all forms of supply. Supply includes all forms of supply such as sale, transfer, exchange, barter, license, lease, rental or disposal. They go ahead and tell that supply includes all form of supply of goods or services, or both, such as it can be either sale, or it can be either transfer, or it can be either exchange, or it can be either barter, or it can be license, or it can be lease, or it can be rental or disposal. Now to understand that particular supply, we'll take one by one and we'll take examples side by side. To understand that particular supply, let us take example of all these cases. Supposing I am selling a laptop. What is the type of supply that we are discussing now? Sale. We are talking about sale, right? So that is also sale is supply, because it starts with supply includes all form of supply such as, then it gives certain examples. It can be sale, it can be exchange, etc, etc, etc. Right? Supposing you are talking about stock transfer of laptop from your branch in Delhi to branch in UP. Remember my friends that stock transfer not always attracts GST. Stock transfer means you're talking about the same company transferring the stock from one branch to another branch. Stock transfer will have GST only if they have separate registration, only if the branches are having separate registration. Normally, if the branches are there in different states, you have to take separate registration. So, I have taken example of one branch in Delhi and the other branch in Uttar Pradesh. So, you are talking about stock transfer of goods from branch in Delhi, from your branch in Delhi to your branch in Uttar Pradesh, right? And where I have specifically or clearly given that they are having separate registration. When you are having your branches in separate states, you have to take two separate GST number. We'll be discussing much about it in our latest discussion. As of now, just remember that the moment you have your branch office in two states, you have to take two GST number. One for one state, another for another state. If at all you are having multiple branches within the same state, you can work with one GST number. Now that you are talking about branches in two different states, mandatorily you have to take two GST number. And when the goods are moving from one branch of Delhi to another branch of Uttar Pradesh, there will be GST applicable. Now this is nothing but transfer, but GST will be there. Why? This transfer is between two branches having separate GST number. If I tell that I am having a branch 1 in Delhi, and I am giving the goods to branch 2 in Delhi, we will understand that it is not at all supply. Why? They will be having the same GST number. Normal scenario. We are talking about a very normal scenario. If I take another example where there is branch 1 in Delhi which is supplying goods to branch 2 which is located in Uttar Pradesh, then this transaction will be covered by your deemed supply. It will be covered by your deemed supply, my friends. When you are going to discuss that, you will have again the same understanding there. It will be covered by deemed supply. Why? Because now these two branches are having different GST numbers. The moment you are having branches in two separate states, mind you my friends, Delhi for the purpose of GST is called as a state. The moment you are having two separate GST number for your branches, then it is actually deemed supply and therefore you will be having GST. If at all it is not supply, there won't be any GST, and if at all it is supply, you will be having GST, right? So they want to ensure that in the definition of supply they write transfer, because in both the cases you are only talking about stock transfer. Whether it is example 1 where you are talking about stock transfer between the same state where it is not supply, no GST, or whether it is example 2 where you are talking about stock transfer between branches of different states where it is deemed supply and there will be GST, but actually you are talking about stock transfer. So they have drafted the definition of supply in such a way that it covers transfer. It covers transfer. The second example was to explain you what is transfer. And whenever my friends you talk about selling your waste and scrap where you don't identify the goods, what are the items. So when you sell your waste and scrap from your house, you don't identify that this is newspaper, this is my old item, etc, etc. This is waste and scrap. That you actually call it as disposal. When you are selling waste and scrap in bulk together, you don't identify the items, what it is. You are selling waste and scrap, and when you are selling waste and scrap, the normal term that is used for sale of waste and scrap is disposal. Disposal, right? That is the example of disposal. Now, if you are getting a new laptop against an old laptop on my payment of extra 10,000, which is a normal thing, isn't it? Right, you gave your old laptop and you got a new laptop, but you have to pay extra amount. So I went inside a shop, I gave my old laptop, and in return I got a new laptop, but I had to make an extra payment of 10,000 rupees, which means that I gave old laptop plus 10,000 and I got new laptop. Now this is a case of exchange. This is a case of exchange. My friends, there's a difference between the term exchange and barter. Exchange is a term which is normally used for interchange of goods of the same type, which means that I gave you old laptop and you gave me new laptop. Obviously there was some monetary consideration also involved, but it is of the same type. It is of the same type. Now my friends, if I tell that I got a laptop against furniture and on payment of 10,000, which means that I gave you my old furniture plus 10,000 and you gave me your laptop. I gave you what? Furniture plus extra 10,000 rupees. I gave you my old furniture plus 10,000 and you gave me your laptop. Then it is a case of barter. It is a case of barter, because you are talking about transaction which is happening between goods, right? But they are of different types. Barter was the first type of business activity that started, isn't it? That you have already learned. So it is called as barter. Furniture and laptop normally are not exchanged, but you are talking about now barter. So I gave you my old furniture plus say 10,000 rupees and you gave me your laptop. That is barter. Now, letting out of commercial property for 1 year or giving car for usage for 1 month, which means that if at all you are talking about giving something for short span of time. So we have taken the example of both immobile property and mobile property. Letting out of commercial property is immobile property for 1 year or giving car for usage for 1 month. Then that is rent. Short term. The moment you talk about short term giving for immobile property, 1 year is actually short term. You're talking about rental. And if I tell that letting of commercial property for 99 years, I'm giving you property on lease for 99 years, or giving machinery which is mobile. Again, we have taken the example of mobile and immobile. Commercial property in both these cases is immobile. Car and machinery are mobile. But now I am giving you machinery for 25 years. That might be the effective life of a machinery. Long term. So, moment you are talking about long term, you use the term lease. You use the term lease. And when you're talking about the last example, you're talking about a scenario where giving rights to use my brand name or giving rights to use the software. Supposing I allow you to use my brand name, right? Anyone who is allowing you the usage of brand name. Say for example, Goli Vada Pav is allowing lot of dealers to use the brand name Goli Vada Pav and sell the Vada Pav. Now that is nothing but license. You may even talk about franchisee, but here you are talking about license. Or supposing you are installing a software on your system to see these videos. Now when you install any software, you accept certain agreement, that is called as end user license agreement. So you are talking about license. You are talking about license. Now friends, I wanted to give examples to make you understand all the terms that is used in the definition of supply. Supply under section 7 tells that supply includes all form of supply, such as it tells it can be sale, or it can be transfer, or it can be disposal, or it can be exchange, or it can be barter, or it can be rental, or it can be lease, or it can be even license. So all these types we have discussed, correct? So that is the normal understanding of the term supply. So we are done with supply. All these points here given, we have discussed with the help of examples. Now, what is the next condition we are talking about? That supply should be in course or furtherance of business. The supply that you are talking about should be in course or furtherance of business, and business is defined under section 2 clause 17. Now what is business? Now business definition is inclusive. Business includes any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, adventure, wager, or any other similar activity, which means that your normal definition that you have used in your commerce subject. So it can be any trade or commerce or production, manufacture or profession, vocation, or adventure or wager, one time activity also possible, or any other similar activity, whether or not for a pecuniary benefit. It may be for profit or it may not be for profit. The key term is whether or not for a pecuniary benefit. Now what is the second point of business? Any activity or transaction in connection with or incidental or ancillary to above, which means that point number 2 of business talks about incidental or ancillary activity to the main business. Incidental or ancillary activity to the main business. Now let us first understand the first 2 points of business with the help of example, then we'll come to the next points. Only first let us understand the first 2 points. Right. Now you are talking about example number 1, supply by Patanjali Limited, Baba Ramdev, not for profit organization but earns huge profit. So goods are being supplied by Patanjali Limited. Now Patanjali is into many businesses. You talk about Ayurvedic medicines, you talk about FMCG goods, you even talk about shirts, jeans. It is into many business. It may tell that it is not profit organization, but it is earning huge profit. Whether it is business for the purpose of GST, yes. Whether or not it is for a pecuniary benefit, it is called as business. So Baba Ramdev cannot tell that no, my intention is not to earn profit. That point he cannot tell. Whether or not you have pecuniary benefit, if you are supplying something, if you are doing something, whether it is trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, adventure, wager or any such similar activity, it is business, whether or not for a pecuniary benefit. Now you cannot bring your normal definition of business from your commerce subject and tell that no, business should be with an intention to earn profit. In GST, whether your intention is to earn profit or not, if at all you are doing any of these activities, right, trade, commerce, etc., it is business. Your intention to earn profit is not relevant. Your intention to earn profit is not relevant. A very, very important point. Second example, supply by Kingfisher Company, which is a profit organization, but matter of fact is it is incurring huge losses. Again, it is business. So you cannot tell that, see, I have huge losses, so now please don't call my activities as business activities. It is still called as business activities. See guys, I have taken 2 examples. One example where it is a non-profit organization but it earns huge profit. Business. Your intention to earn profit is not relevant. Second example, it is a profit organization but is having huge losses. Again, it is business within the definition of business of GST Act. Now, here the intention was to earn profit, but you did not actually earn profit. Actual earning of profit is also not relevant. Intention to earn profit is not relevant. Actual earning of profit is also not relevant. So that you have to understand. Now, third example, you are talking about Salman Khan is performing in a movie called as Sultan and getting his acting fees, which is his main business. Yes, profession rather. So business even includes profession. It is covered by the definition of business. In the same movie, Sultan, Salman Khan also sings a song and is also getting singing fees. This is incidental or ancillary to the main business. Salman Khan's main job is acting. And because he is acting, there are few things that will come up to him automatically. So when he is acting and he is having so much power in reality that he can tell the producer that I also want to sing a song in this movie. No one will tell him no. That being the case, you are talking about incidental or ancillary activity. See, we are understanding this in a very lighter sense, in a very humorous sense, so that you get all these points very clearly. Incidental or ancillary activity. You are focusing on incidental or ancillary activity. Right. You can take a practical example where you are talking about a motor vehicle dealer selling helmets. So selling motor vehicle is his main business, and selling helmets is incidental or ancillary, even that is covered within the definition of business. GST will be there. Now first 2 points of business defines business. Second 2 points of business only clarifies what is business. What is the next point? So point number 1, point number A we have discussed, point number B we have discussed, now point number C. Point number C tells that any activity or transaction in the nature of A above, what is not relevant, whether or not there is volume or there is frequency or there is continuity or there is regularity, it will be called as business. If at all you are covered by point number A, you cannot tell that, see, I don't have that volume. Volume is not relevant. Frequency, I don't do it frequently. Frequency is not relevant. Continuity, not relevant. I don't do it every time. Continuity, not relevant. Or regularity, not relevant. Frequency, regularity, continuity, or volume, all these 4 points are not relevant. So, for example, I am telling that I am only selling one machinery in a year, though I am selling it for 1 crore rupees. I cannot tell that I am selling only one machinery. Volume, not relevant. Frequency, not relevant. Continuity, not relevant. Regularity, not relevant. Let us take an example for that to understand. Now continue with this example number 5. We'll take point by point, and again we'll go back to understand what was left out. Salman Khan sells his paintings, which he makes very occasionally, but he intends to sell them. See, I'm very careful with the example and the language that I've used. He is making it rarely, which means that Salman Khan may make a painting, say abstract painting, which only he can understand, no one else can understand, which is making very rarely, say once in 2 years or 3 years. But whenever he's making, his intention is to sell it and get profit, right? That is intention to sell it, that is an intention to do business with it. Now it is business. Now if I change this example and if I tell that one of my friends who's watching this lecture is also a painter by hobby, and if he is making painting and some guest is coming to his or her home and they like the painting and they tell that let us take this painting, and as a matter that they have taken the painting, they are paying you something. You are not asking for it, but they are telling that we cannot take it free of cost because we have liked it and we are taking it on our own. Maybe close relatives have come and they tell that we want this painting, it is excellent, and we have a place in our house where we can have this painting. It will perfectly suit that particular place. Now when they are taking that painting, you are not in a position to tell no, and as a matter of being gracious, they are offering you an amount, and though you tell that I don't want anything, but they are forcefully giving you amount. Now is it business? Answer is no. That is not business. That will not be covered here. There was never any trade, commerce, etc. Forget about your intention to earn profit. There was never any trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, etc. Now when I have given this example number 5, I was very clear that Salman Khan is selling his painting, which he makes very occasionally, once in say 2 years or 3 years, but he is having intention to sell them. Whether at profit or loss, forget about it, but he is having intention to sell them. That is business. Why? Your frequency is not relevant, your continuity is not relevant, your regularity is not relevant, your volume is not relevant. All these 4 points are not important, not relevant, right? That is about point number C of business. Now, point number D. When you are talking about point number D, you are talking about supply or acquisition of goods, including capital assets and services. Supply or acquisition of goods or services, including capital assets and services, in connection with either beginning of your business, commencement of your business, or closure of your business. See, what are they trying to tell? Even if you supply your capital goods or capital services, it is business. You cannot tell that, say for example, I am dealing only with coaching class services and I have certain laptops, certain equipments which are capital assets for me. Say after 20 years, I am planning to sell them. When I am selling these capital assets, I cannot tell that I was not dealing with these capital goods. They are only my assets. Though my business was giving coaching class services, when I am selling all these capital goods, I am required to pay GST even on the supply of capital goods. I'll repeat, though my main business is coaching class, but when I sell all these equipments, all these capital assets, should I pay GST also on these capital assets? Answer is yes. Even that is covered by the definition of business, right? I cannot take a shelter telling that no, my business is coaching class, my profession is coaching class. Therefore, when I am selling these capital goods at the time of closure of my profession, say after 20 years or 25 years, then I cannot tell that I am not going to pay GST or the same. It is very well covered within the definition of business, right? Example number 6. Salman Khan, he is an actor. His main business is acting. Salman, though he may or he may not do acting in all the movies, but his main business, what he proclaims, is acting. Now Salman Khan sells his professional camera, capital goods. He is selling his professional camera, which was used in his production house, SK Films, which was used in his production house. So Salman Khan is selling his professional camera. I am very clear that it was used in his production house. Now whether that is business, yes. You are talking about supply of capital assets used in business, that will also attract GST. Now I have to necessarily take even example number 7 to make you understand one point. If Salman Khan is selling his personal car, which was used only for his personal purposes, nothing to do with business, tomorrow If you guys are selling your own vehicles, motor vehicles, it is very common to sell your old vehicle and get new vehicle. Whether you guys are required to pay GST on sale of that vehicle? No. That capital asset should be used in business. Only then it can be called as capital asset, capital goods. Right? So there it will not be called as business. So please don't confuse. Supply of capital assets and services is surely business, but when it is used for business purposes. If you are selling your personal items, supposing you are changing your mobile phone, you are selling your old mobile phone and getting a new one. So when you are giving your old mobile phone, is it business? No, my friends, it is not at all business. Rather, you have to understand that business was defined by point number 1 and 2, A and B. Right, point number A and B defined business. Point number C and D only clarifies. Only clarifies what is business. Point number A and B defines what is business. So definition of business is given by point number A and B itself. Point number C and D only clarifies what is business. They don't define what is business, they only clarify what is business. What they clarify? They tell that your volume, frequency, continuity, regularity is not relevant. They also tell that even if you are supplying capital assets and services which were used in your business, even then it is business and you have to pay GST on that. So point number C and D only clarifies what is business. Now you will tell no, business is not ending here. You have even E, F, G, H, I. They are specific clarification. They are specific clarification. Point number C and D are general clarification. Point number E to I are specific clarification with respect to special businesses. Now let us understand this point number E, F, G, H, I with the help of examples. With the help of examples. Right, example number 4 will be sufficient to explain all these points. Now when you talk about unincorporated clubs or association, it is very common that you are living in a residential complex where you have residential welfare association. That association is not registered. Right, there are many clubs within your city which are not registered. When you talk about that club or that association, it may take some monthly contribution. So if you are contributing to that residential welfare association, if you are there in a residential complex, you have to pay monthly maintenance charges. Whether that is covered within the definition of business? Answer is yes. So special clarification, there are 5 specific clarification. Now all these specific clarification talks about certain special cases. Now that first special case is about unincorporated clubs or association of persons. They tell that when you are talking about unincorporated association of persons or body of individuals and you are paying certain amount on monthly basis, even that is covered within the definition of business. So your monthly maintenance charges that you are paying to your residential welfare association, it is covered within the definition of business. GST is levied. My friends, we are discussing the topic levy. GST levy is there. Obviously, there is an exemption for residential welfare association. If the monthly maintenance amount is up to 7,500 per month per member, then it is exempted. But that is not about levy. That is about collection. My friends, we are discussing only and only about levy. Whether levy is there? Yes, levy is there. Forget about collection. Collection may or may not be there, but levy is there. What is the first specific clarification given? About whom? It is about unincorporated association of persons and body of individuals when they are getting monthly contribution from their members, even that is subject to GST. You may be a member of a sports club and you are paying monthly contribution to that sports club. Even levy is there on that sports club. Levy is there. It may not be collected because of exemption. That is a different story. But levy is there on that unincorporated association of persons or body of individuals, which we roughly called it as clubs. Now second clarification is about what? Entry fees for admission to any premises. Wherever you go to a place and there you have to pay entry fees for admission for entry to any premises. For example, we have taken a case where you are going to Statue of Unity, right, and you are required to pay entry fees depending on where you want to go, at what level you want to go to see Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Right, so based on that you have to pay entry fees. Rather, entry fees is at many places. Entry fees for zoo, entry fees for wildlife sanctuary, entry fees when you are going and watching movies. Right, it can be for anything. Entry fees which is paid for admission to any premises. that is also business, and GST levy is there. Are we discussing about collection? No. Levy is there, collection may be there, may not be there because of exemption. So we are discussing only levy. So second specific clarification is about entry fees which you are paying for admission to any premises. Third point, you are talking about service supplied by a person as an holder of an office because of his business or profession. You are talking about service which is supplied by a person because he is holding an office due to his business or profession. Now what are they trying to tell? Let us take an example to make it clear. Service by an independent director is a classic example. Now companies, mainly public limited companies, will have independent directors, and how independent directors are selected? They are selected based on their profession or business. They have certain skill set. For example, Ratan Tata may be appointed as independent director even in another car manufacturing company where he is not associated because he is giving his skill sets, he is giving his ideas to that company. So based on your business or profession, you have earned certain knowledge, and the other companies are interested to share your knowledge that you are acquired to them, and there they will be paying you something. So we have taken an example where you are talking about independent director. Why? You are supplying a service because you are holding an office in that company. Now understand, my friends, independent director is not the employee of the company. If at all he is employee of the company, we will see in our further discussion that payment to employees outside the ambit of GST, there is no GST. And here independent director is not actually acting as employee of that company. He is holding that position because of his knowledge in that business or profession. You are talking about service supplied by a person as an holder of an office, as an holder of any office, because of his business or profession. What office is holding in a company? Supposing I am appointed as independent director in L&T company. So there I am not acting as employee of L&T company. I am supplying services. I am supplying my services of giving certain ideas to L&T company, right? So you are talking about services supplied by a person acting as holder of an office because of his business or profession. Even that is categorized as business. Right, you can have a lot of examples, not only independent directors, you can have examples of even consultants or concurrent auditors, etc., etc. Independent director was just an example to make you understand that. Point number 4, or example number 4 here. Activities of a race club, specifically they are talking about race club. Activities of a race club including by way of totalizator. Totalizator is nothing but a machine, automated machine where you give your betting when you go inside a race club. Right, they want to tell that when you are going inside a race club, any activities done by that race club, including by way of totalizator, where you pay something in that automated machine, and for that also they take some charges, that is very much covered within the ambit of business. So all the activities that are happening in race club, including by way of that automated machine totalizator, will be subject to GST, and therefore they have made it very clear that it will be called as business. Otherwise, if this point is not that, tomorrow they may tell that it is not business and they may tell that it is not subject to GST. So for that purposes, they have clarified it here. And my friends, we have already discussed that when you are talking about betting, gambling, lottery, it is an actionable claim. And we have discussed that actionable claim other than betting, gambling, lottery are not subject to GST. So if you are talking about actionable claim, if it is betting, gambling, lottery, that will have GST. If it is other than betting, gambling, lottery, that will not attract GST. And here when you are talking about race club, you are talking about betting. Here when you are talking about race club, you are talking about betting, which will have GST. And to ensure that it is having GST, they have clarified that activities of race club, including by way of totalizator, falls under the ambit of business. Tomorrow they should not take a stand that what they are doing is not business. Therefore, all these specific clarification. My friends, whether it is point number 1 here, 2 or 3 or 4 or the 5th point that we are going to discuss, all these 5 specific clarifications are to ensure that tomorrow one should not get up and tell that my activity is not business, therefore GST is not that. That is the only purpose. Therefore, you have specific clarification with respect to special cases. Now, 5th specific clarification is for government. Activities by government, that is central government, state government or local authority, in which they are acting as public authority. See, normally my friends, if I tell that whether government has to pay GST, obviously there will be few of my friends who will tell that why should government pay GST? Even government is required to pay GST. So when government is giving goods or services to you, even government, whether it is central government, state government or local authority, even government is supplying goods or services to you, even government is required to, government is supplying goods or services to recipient, even government is liable to pay GST. Now you may tell, what is the use? Government will pay GST to themselves? No. Government is not paying GST themselves. Government is collecting it from you and paying it to them, which means that there is an increase of revenue to the government. They want to tell that even activities of government, even when they are acting as public authority, which means they are doing sovereign functions only which government can do, even then it is subject to GST. Even then it is subject to GST. The same thing is not true with your income tax. Government is not liable to pay income tax, but here government is liable to pay GST. So they want to make it very clear and understand, my friends, when government is paying GST, government is at a winning position. Why? Government will collect price plus GST from you and it will pay to itself. When I tell it will pay to itself, it is not necessarily the same government, because government are of three types: central government, state government and local authority. Then it will pay GST to the respective government depending on what type of transaction it is. Right? Rather, this GST burden is not on the government. This GST burden is on you, because government is going to collect GST from you. Government is going to shift the burden of GST on you, because GST being an indirect taxes, the burden will be shifted to you. So rather it is a win position for the government, because government will collect GST from you and then pay it in respective pocket of either central government or state government or union territory, as the case may be. So they want to tell that government are not free from GST. Even activities of central government, state government or local authority, even when they are engaged as public authority, even that will attract GST and even that activity will be defined as business. My friends, if this point was not said to you, normal understanding is government, why government should pay GST? Government should pay GST because of a simple reason, that it is an indirect tax. Government is not paying from its own pocket to itself. Government is collecting GST from you and paying it to pocket of central government, state government or union territory, as the case may be. And another reason why government is required to pay GST, because if the same goods or services are supplied by a normal businessman to, say, a recipient, they are going to charge GST. When they are going to charge GST and pay it to the government, they expect that when the same goods or services are supplied by the government, even government should charge GST. Otherwise, people will not buy the goods from a private entity. People will always prefer buying goods only from government, because it will be without GST. So there is one more reason why government has to charge GST, right? Because there will be unfair competition between government and private entity. So for it to be fair competition, whether government is supplying that goods or services or a normal private entity supplying goods or services, there should be GST. GST levy should be there. That is one reason. And second reason, as I said, government is not paying GST from its own pocket. Government is collecting from the recipient and paying to pocket of central government, state government or local authority, as the case may be. So there are two reasons why even government is coming under the ambit of GST, and therefore to make it very clear, they have clarified that the government activities are falling within the ambit of definition of business. If this point was not written, tomorrow it may be argued that it is not business activity, therefore there is no GST. So they are very cautious with the wordings, even to the extent of clarifying it inside the definition of business. Now there is one more point which is given as a note for the last point when you talk about government. This point you will understand when you are going to see not supply. There are certain activities of government like panchayat activity, municipality activity, and giving the license fees for getting the license fees for grant of alcoholic liquor, which does not attract GST because it is covered by not supply. Friends, if you remember, supply has to be read in this way: actual supply, deemed supply, not supply. Not supply has got two parts. First part is notified activities, and there are totally 5 notified activities. 2 notified activities for any person and 3 notified activities for government. Now what are those 3 notified activities? They are panchayat related activities under article 243 G, municipality related activities under Article 243W, and license fees for grant of alcoholic liquor license, where government is getting something from the recipient, but it is not subject to GST because it is covered by not supply. So don't worry friends, this point we are going to discuss again when we are going to discuss not supply. So it is, I am just adding add a note. Is it given anywhere in business? No. Business stops here. Business tells that even activity of government, even when they are engaged as public authority, it is business. So business stops here. I have just added an extra note to tell that there are 3 cases, there are 3 points where government is doing something which does not attract GST. What are those 3 points? Panchayat related activity, municipality related activity, and getting the license fees for granting the license of alcoholic liquor. Those are the 3 cases where government is acting as a supplier and there is no GST because it is covered by not supply. So we'll be discussing about that very clearly when we are discussing not supply. Friends, now if you look at the definition of business in terms of examples, point number A and B we have discussed in example 3. Even point number C and D we have discussed in example 3. And point number E, F, G, H, I, point number E to I we have discussed in example 4. Example 4 talks about 5 special cases for special industries where they want to clarify that even their activities fall under the ambit of business. Now my friends, we are seeing actual supply where there are 3 elements. First is activity, that is supply, which we have discussed in length, section 7. Second is business, which is defined under section 2, clause 17, which we again discussed in length. You have to read it as 2 defining business, 2 normal clarification, 5 special clarification. So totally there are 9 points of business which we have clearly discussed one by one. And now we are discussing consideration, which is defined under section 2, clause 31. Now consideration, what is consideration? We can clearly take an examples and cover that definition. What is consideration? What is consideration? Now consideration can be either monetary consideration or non-monetary consideration. Either monetary consideration or non-monetary consideration. So you can receive consideration either in monetary terms or non-monetary terms. If I am giving you coaching class services say for 10,000 plus GST, it is monetary consideration. And if I am giving you coaching class services say for in exchange of a new camera, that is non-monetary consideration. So whether it is monetary consideration or non-monetary consideration, it is consideration. So types of consideration can be monetary or non-monetary. Consideration can be paid by the recipient or third party on behalf of recipient. So when I am giving you services, either you can pay me consideration or you can ask one of your friends to pay me consideration. So it can be monetary consideration, non-monetary consideration, that is types of consideration. And it can be paid by the recipient yourself or it can be paid by third party on behalf of recipient. It doesn't make any difference. So whether consideration is given by the recipient or given by the third party on behalf of recipient, it really does not make any difference. Right? Now there are certain special aspects for that you have to remember for consideration. Now before entering into those aspects, you have to understand certain special points of consideration. Now consideration is received for what? Consideration is for doing an activity. At times it is also for refraining from doing an activity. We are going to discuss about this when we are discussing schedule 2. Consideration is for doing an activity or even refraining from doing an activity, not doing an activity. And that activity, either it is supply of goods or it can be supply of services. So that activity can be either supply of goods or supply of services. And the consideration that you are paying can be monetary consideration or non-monetary consideration. And the consideration that is paid can be paid by the recipient or third party on behalf of recipient. So this is what you have to understand when you talk about consideration. Consideration is for what? For doing an activity or refraining from doing an activity, not doing an activity. That activity may result into supply of goods or supply of services. and the consideration that you're going to give to me may be monetary consideration or non-monetary consideration, and the consideration that you're giving may be paid by you directly or by third party, by recipient or third party. So these are the important points that you have to understand with respect to consideration. Now, when you talk about consideration, there's a special term given in consideration. Whether subsidy given by the government falls within the ambit of consideration? No. If it is a subsidy given by the government, we are going to discuss this point again in valuation in length. Subsidy given by the government does not fall under the definition of consideration. But if it is subsidy given by a person other than government, it will very well come within the definition of consideration. Supposing I am selling an item. Supposing I am selling an item, right, for 100 rupees, and government gives me subsidy. So there is a subsidy given by the government. In addition to 100 rupees, government tells that you sell it for 100 rupees, we are very happy with your work, I am going to give you subsidy 10 rupees. And other case, the subsidy is given by my, say, holding company. Holding company is giving the subsidy of, say, 10 rupees, same 10 rupees. So example number 1, example number 2. One thing which is constant, I am selling the goods for, say, 100 rupees. Now, what are they trying to tell? Consideration in first example will be only 100. 10 rupees will not be added. Consideration in the second example, where I have sold it for 100 rupees, where I am going to get 100 rupees from the recipient. So consideration in second example, 100 rupees is a point where it is indifferent. So 100 rupees will be part of consideration. Plus this 100 rupees I am getting from my recipient. Plus I have to add even 10 rupees which I am getting it from my holding company. So in the second case, consideration will be 110 in total. Whereas in the first case, consideration will be 100. Right. So subsidy given by the government will not be added to the consideration, and subsidy given by any person other than government will be added to consideration. We will be discussing more about it in valuation chapter. Now what about loans and deposits? If at all you are giving loan or taking loan, or if you are making deposits or taking deposits, there is no GST. It doesn't comes under the ambit of consideration. There is no GST. When you talk about loans or deposits, they are mere transaction in money. Loans is for financial assistance. Deposit is for security purposes. And both loans and deposits comes with a common understanding that it is payable or refundable as the case may be. If it is loan, it is again payable. If it is deposit, it is actually refundable. So it is not forever. So when you talk about loans and deposits, they are nothing but mere transaction in money, where there will not be any GST. But when you talk about advances is actually subject matter of GST, and it is very well covered within consideration. But when we are going to see a chapter called as time of supply, if you get advances in respect to goods, there will not be GST, because GST is not on advances received for goods. But if you get advances for services, there will be GST. I will repeat, if I am getting an advance for supply of goods, because of section 12 time of supply, there is no GST. Technically GST is there. Advances is also part of consideration, no doubt. Understand that advance is also part of consideration. So please don't have any doubts. Whether it is for goods or whether it is of services, it is also part of consideration. So I am not challenging that. Advance is part of consideration. But if it is advance for goods, finally you don't pay GST. So if I had to write that whether it is part of consideration, if I had to have an answer, another column where I write that whether it is consideration, whether it is goods or whether it is services, advances is part of consideration, no doubt. But advances received for supply of goods, there won't be GST because of time of supply section 12. Advances received for supply of services will be subject to GST because of time of supply section 13. That understanding will have more clearly when we discuss a topic called as time of supply. As of now, roughly understand few things. Just understand few things, don't try to find the logic. Logic will be discussing in that chapter, time of supply. I'll repeat, whether advances form part of consideration, whether it is for goods or whether it is for services, whether it is for goods or whether it is for services, they form part of consideration. But GST is not there when you talk about advance receipt against supply of goods, whereas GST is there because GST is there on advances receipt for supply of services, and the logic for that is time of supply. Section 12 for goods and section 13 for services. So that is all about your consideration. Now when you see your actual supply, you are very clear with all the three elements: activity being supply, business we have already thoroughly discussed, and consideration. Activity being supply we have discussed with the help of section 7. Next, business we have discussed with the help of section 2 clause 17 definition, and consideration section 2 clause 31. We have discussed all the three elements with the help of all the examples. Right, again clarifications. Whenever I said you are talking about clarification, you have to be calm and composed. You do not worry about clarifications. The moment you talk about circular, you can indirectly take a short kind of rest. You need not stress yourself, just listen to what I am telling and things will be very clear. Maybe it can be your tea time when we are discussing the circulars. Now what about donations paid? Donations and gifts. Whether donations and gifts will attract GST. Whether donation and gifts will attract GST. Understand that when you are giving donation or gifts, there is no contractual reciprocity. Say for example, I am going to donate something to an institution, right? There is no contractual reciprocity. I don't expect anything on return. So donation and donation or gifts does not have any contractual reciprocity, contractual obligation. That being the case, forget about actual supply, deemed supply, not supply. It is not at all supply. There is no GST. So normally when you are giving donations to certain institutions, or supposing you went to your friend's marriage and you handed over money gift or non-monetary gift, whether he is required to pay GST on that? No, there is no contractual obligation. Supposing you gave a cover of say 1000 rupees and on your friend's wedding who is very close to you, and few years later you have some misunderstanding and you don't talk. Can you take that 1000 rupees again? No. There's no contractual reciprocity. There's no contractual obligation. Back to basics, your Indian Contract Act. There's no contractual obligation. Therefore, there will not be any GST. Therefore, there will not be any GST. But specific donation. Supposing if I make donation to an institution where I specifically tell that I am giving this donation only if you are going to write my name on the front side of your wall, on the front side of your building itself. Alright, with that understanding I am giving donation, then that is subject to GST because there is contractual reciprocity. Now you will tell that no, in our city itself we have seen a lot of cases where people give donations and where they write their names. Understand that there should be quid pro quo, mutual understanding. If I will give that donation only if you write my name. I can change this example in one more way. Supposing I have given a donation to an institution where I did not ask for anything, and as a matter of gratitude they wrote my name on the wall of the building. Now did I ask them to write the name on the wall? No. Whether I have to pay GST, whether GST is applicable on the donation being paid to that institution, whether that institution has to pay GST, answer is no. If at all there is a contractual understanding on contractual reciprocity or contractual obligation, I will pay you so and so donation only if you are going to write my name. Sponsorship, I will give you so and so amount only if you are going to write my name, display my name. That is nothing but sponsorship, advertisement, one way of advertisement. Then that is subject to GST. But if I give donation in normal course, right, and I forget about that donation, and if that institution is writing my name as a matter of gratitude, then I did not ask them to write my name on the building or on the wall or on the entire city, on the roads of the entire city. I did not ask them. There is no GST on such case. That is about the first circular that it is clarifying. Right. Now, the second circular, you are talking about a special case where you are taking the goods outside India for exhibition. You are taking the goods outside India for exhibition. And the third circular, you are talking about GST applicability on superior kerosene oil. Let us understand, my friends, we are going to discuss this particular point when this particular circular, when we are going to discuss schedule 1. Discussing now will not make full sense. You may not understand all the aspects. Therefore, the second circular which is given here, you will even find the reference of schedule 1 here. So we'll discuss when we are done with schedule 1. So we'll discuss then. The answer would be quite simple. Rather, I'll come back here, I'll tell that, see, we have understood now schedule 1, hardly 2 minutes it will be over. And the third circular, we are going to discuss in a chapter called as documentation. I'll again come here. Don't worry, whatever is not discussed will be discussed at right time. We'll be discussing when we are discussing a chapter called as documentation. We'll discuss again this example. This example is again given, this circular is again given in that particular chapter documentation. Rather, schedule 1, circular number 2, schedule 1 will come within this topic. So we'll be discussing that within this topic. And third circular will be discussing when we talk about GST applicability on superior kerosene oil, etc., etc. That circular will be discussing in a chapter called as documentation, because it has got to do something with documentation, delivery challan. You will be finding a term where you are going to discuss about delivery challan, right? So that being the case, we are going to discuss that in documentation, a separate topic. My friends, I will always tell that whenever it is circular, make sure that you have your tea time. You can have your tea or snacks and you can listen that, so that you have clarity, because circulars will not tell anything new. First circular, we did not tell anything new. It is just normal thing, contractual reciprocity. Second circular will be discussing when you are discussing schedule 1. And third circular will be discussing a separate topic called as documentation. I'll make sure that I link you to the definition of supply where we are stopping now. So that linkage will be properly there. That interlinking will be properly there. So whenever it is circulars, you please take a break. Not you. Don't get outside the video and all. You just take a tea break where you can have your tea and watch the video simultaneously, or you can have your snacks and watch the video simultaneously. That is the easiness, or that is the simplicity of the circulars, because the moment you are very clear with the law, circulars will not add anything. And my friends, as I already clarified, circulars are only clarificatory nature. They are not part of law and they are not binding on assessee. They are only clarificatory in nature. They may not be good in law. At times there are circulars which are not good in law. So that is all about your supply. Even circular number 3 and 4, they talk about the same concept. So circular number 3 as well as circular number 4, which talks about your petroleum gas, same thing. The concept is exactly the same in circular number 3 and circular number 4. Both these circulars will be discussing in chapter called as documentation. They don't have any differentiation. I don't understand why they have given as 2 circulars. It talks about the same thing, same logic, and we will be discussing that together. The example that you find here will be there also in your documentation chapter. We will be discussing that in your documentation chapter, circular number 3 and 4. So that completes our first part, actual supply. Friends, we are discussing supply, and supply has to be broken up into actual supply, deemed supply, not supply. Now we are done with actual supply, where we have discussed the activity, that is any activity being specifically supply. Actually, they don't use the term activity. We have used it for simplicity, ABC. Activity being supply, business and consideration. When these 3 elements are present, it is actual supply.